So anyway, my name is John Buren. I live on North Huffman Road in the city. And I also currently serve as a county legislator representing the 9th District. And the 9th District borders the property at 200 West Hill, which is a solar project that we'll be discussing tonight. And also the 9th District represents a portion of the town of Elmira. I want to begin by sharing with all of you how this came to be, this meeting tonight came to be. I received a text on January 7th with a letter attached to the text. And that letter was encouraging neighbors to attend a planning board meeting regarding a solar project on West Hill Road. The meeting was held on January 6th, the planning board meeting. So I received the letter the day after the meeting. I didn't really think that much of it at the time. A few days later, I received a call from Mike Smith, who's sitting to my left. And Mike told me that I would be getting a call from a Mr. Rosengata regarding a solar project. And Mr. Rosengata called me that day, and he explained to me a bit about the project at 200 West Hill Road, and also told me that there had been 2 public hearings and that the planning board would be meeting again on February 3rd, and there was a possibility that the project would be approved at that meeting. I don't know how accurate that was, but that was the message. So I called the town and I asked if I could attend the next planning board meeting and speak regarding the proposed solar project. I was advised that it was a public meeting and yes, I could attend, but the time for public comment had passed. So I could submit something in writing, but I wouldn't be able to speak at the planning board meeting. So then I made a few phone calls and I had a meeting at my house. And the meeting at my house included neighbors, the Elmira mayor, several legislators, county legislators, the fire chief, there were a few others. And so at that meeting, it was a very good meeting, several of the attendees spoke at that meeting who were well versed in solar and fire and all of those types of things. At the conclusion of that meeting, it was decided that because the public comment portion of the public hearings had passed and we couldn't speak at the next planning board meeting, to have our own meeting and invite the town board, the Elmira Town Board, the Elmira Planning Board, businesses, and the community, so that we could speak and send that message this way to the planning board. And as a result, it's a great turnout, so thank you very much. So solar right now is a very hot topic, as we know. And currently, the towns of Southport, Big Flats, Chemung, and Veteran have moratoriums in place for solar projects. The town of Erin had a moratorium and then passed a local law for solar after they did research during their moratorium. So one of the ways I'm going to, they said I could submit something in writing to the planning board, but rather than do that, as a result of this meeting, what I want to do, I retained the services of Steve Ramsdale, as Steve with the camera. We're taping this meeting, so everyone knows that this meeting is being taped. And then this tape will then go to the planning board, as well as the town board, as well as any of these communities that are currently have moratoriums that would be interested in what the public has to say, because some of the comments I think that'll come out at tonight's meeting would be the same comments in any other municipality. The town of Elmira has a zoning ordinance, a solar ordinance, and a battery storage ordinance. The solar and battery ordinance don't mesh with or talk to the zoning ordinance. They're completely separate. The zoning ordinance in a municipality controls all of the activities that happen throughout your town, whether you can have residential property or businesses, whatever it might be. But solar is not included in the town of Elmira's zoning ordinance. It's in their solar ordinance and the battery ordinance. Both of those ordinances are more permissible than the zoning ordinance. So zoning is a non-factor which can become very problematic as you move forward with projects. We're hoping that as a result of this meeting, the town of Elmira will mirror the towns of Southport, Big Flats, Chemung, Veteran, and Erin. When you think about all the land area that all of those towns encompass and the potential for solar, and all of them have taken the time to pass a moratorium to take a look at what this is environmentally, economically, socially, and so on. We're hoping that the town of Elmira will take a step back and also do the same thing before approving any solar projects. The 200 West Hill Road proposal, which is across the street from me, that's how I got involved in this, and it encompasses 24 acres of wooded land, and that's going to be developed with a solar panel project as well as a battery storage container. This is a residential area and it is zoned ag residential. So the format for tonight, we have a few speakers, and once the speakers have taken their turn, we're going to open it up for questions and comments. I would ask if you have a question or a comment to direct everything to the panel, not to other individuals. If you have a question or comment, would you please give your name? And if you represent a company or anyone, if you're here to represent anyone other than yourself, if you would just also mention that to us. So our first speaker tonight, unfortunately, isn't here. But Senator Tom Elmira is in Albany in budget hearings, so they couldn't make it here tonight. And his chief of staff just had surgery on her ankle, so they could not make it. But our second speaker, oh, there's Mike Rogers.
I'm going to pinch hit for Sarah. And
okay, come on. This is Mike Rogers, yes. Mike Rogers is with the senator.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah. So we appreciate the senator, like John said. Let me set this down so I can. He was on all-day budget hearings. We appreciate the opportunity to hear from a lot of stakeholders and learn more about what's happening, and so we appreciate that. I know there's going to be. I'd rather listen more than talk. And hear what folks have to say. We know that, New York State's already a leader in much of this, in clean energy, and we should remain a leader, but we all have to be good stewards of both natural resources and financial resources. So, he's always been for clean, affordable, reliable, safe energy. That includes kind of an all of the above approach. Including things like natural gas and other things that aren't related to what we're talking about tonight, as long as there's honest cost-benefit analysis of those things. And we want to hear more about the details before we talk too much. We know he knows that home rule and local control over these issues is very important, and we want to see what the people and the stakeholders have to say about all of this too. And so I'll just reserve my, do more listening than talking.
Okay.
And try to help if there is any kind of questions, although Sarah's more of an expert on these things than me, but I'll be glad to share what I know too.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Take notes.
Yeah. So our second speaker is Calvin Cady. And Calvin is the fire marshal for the city of Elmira. Now, many of you may not know that the city of Elmira is the hazmat response team for the entire county. So if you have a hazardous waste issue in Baldwin, Erin, doesn't matter where it is, it's the city of Elmira fire department that's going to be responding. They'll be the lead. They'll have help from other agencies, but they are the lead. They are our hazmat unit for the county. You know, that being said, to the best of my knowledge, with the solar contracts that have been in place or are in place right now, there's never been any consideration given to the solar companies providing funds to the city fire department. And I do think moving forward that should be considered, because as we're all running away from the fire or the hazardous material, Calvin and his guys are running into it. And that's a scary thing. So as we move forward, and no matter what town you're from, if you're dealing with these contracts, think about the Elmira Fire Department and maybe making that part of the contract. So right now, I'll give you Calvin.
Thanks, John. So again, I'm Calvin Cady. I'm the fire marshal for the city of Elmira. I'm here speaking on behalf of Chief Andrew Mallow. He asked me to come and speak. I'm gonna read his notes to you. So the EFD was made aware of a solar project at 200 West Hill Road in July of 2024. Chief Mallow attended the West Elmira board meeting in November of 24. At this meeting, Chief Mallow asked a representative from Lavella if this project contained any lithium-ion storage, and the representative said yes, it does. This was the first indication to us that this facility was being considered. This project consisted of clear-cutting the forest to put in approximately a 20-acre solar field with a storage bank in the center, the storage bank containing the lithium-ion batteries. The individual from Labella indicated that the battery storage would have a concrete containment area as well as a suppression system. Okay. So we were also made aware of 2 other solar projects being proposed in the town of Elmira on East Hill. After this meeting, I was made aware of a solar project in Big Flats on Crest Road at the very top of Hillcrest Road, as well as possibly a battery storage facility in West Elmira. Here is what we know about solar fields and battery storage facilities. The solar panels themselves are relatively safe. The biggest concern with solar panels is how they will be disposed of after their use. Everything goes bad at some point. They are considered hazardous materials, but they need to be able to store this energy somehow, and that is where the lithium-ion battery storage facilities come into play. This is our greatest concern for the fire department. Not only do we respond to fires in the West Hill area, we also, as John said, are the hazmat team for the county. Lithium-ion battery technology. These batteries are found in everything now, from cell phones to e-bikes to cars. They are currently the most efficient way to store energy. Unfortunately, this comes with risk. The bigger the battery, the bigger the risk. The battery storage containers that accompany the solar fields are typically the size of a tractor trailer box. Some contain as many as 20 of these containers. We're unsure right now as to what this will contain. From the sounds of it, it'll be 1 container.
That's my understanding.
Okay. They go into what's called, so when one of these fails, when one of the batteries inside fails, there's multiple batteries inside of these containers. When one of them fails, it can go into thermal runaway, it's called. So thermal runaway is a process where it's heating all the other batteries, and they go off one after another after another. It creates its own oxygen. It's very hard to extinguish with water. You need a large volume of water to be able to extinguish these fires. Why are we concerned about a fire? Well, there have been 3 fires in the last 6 months in these battery storage facilities in New York State. I encourage you to look them up. One was in Jefferson County, one in East Hampton, and one in Warwick. Residents were evacuated for 5 days for one of these fires. In California, and even recently, there have been fires as well. At these fires, residents were evacuated again for days due to smoke and chemicals produced from the fires. These fires contain large plumes of smoke, violent explosions, and toxic gases. Not to mention, we are talking about high voltage. They're designed to hold power. Even when they're on fire, they still have power within them, so we have to consider that still. We can't just go spray water on power lines, right? This creates a few concerns for firefighters as well as the public. The biggest concern is that these fires could potentially give off hydrogen fluoride gas, which they do. HF is extremely hazardous to humans, even at low concentrations. HF is typically in chemical manufacturing as well as glass etching. Most of the time with fires involving these storage facilities, they have evacuated 1 mile downwind due to risk of being exposed to HF as well as other chemicals. So that could increase due to weather. Weather carries these plumes of smoke, so we have to consider the weather, which way the wind's blowing. When you look 1 mile from these proposed facilities, you could be looking at the prison, Arnott Ogden Medical Facility, and the region's water treatment facility. The second concern is the use of water to extinguish the fire. Again, high voltage. We would need to make sure that the risk of electrocution was eliminated before attempting to extinguish a fire at one of these facilities. The next concern is that if you mix water and HF, it creates hydrofluoric acid. So now we would have a concern with the runoff, contaminating the creeks and drinking water. Also water supply. We would need tanker shuttle for days to add if we decided to fight this with water. Often these are let go and you just let them burn out. That's often what happens. The third concern is a forest fire. They're putting it in an area, they're clear cutting an area, so it's gonna be in an area where there is a forest. We would have to contain the fire and make sure it stays contained to the battery facility. In this area, we do get dry spells, so that would be a concern for us too. We have to weigh all these factors, and we have to have plans for all of it. As firefighters, we are always learning and adapting to new technology. The lithium-ion technology has sort of outpaced the safety aspect of the batteries. They're everywhere, and we don't have all the answers as to how we fight them. Everyone's different. Sometimes it's better to let them burn. Sometimes we can put them out if it's a smaller battery, but a big container full of batteries is going to be very difficult to put out with water. And as you know, that's what we use to fight fires. We use water, and lots of it. We're still learning how to fight these fires that never seem to totally go out, and how to protect the public with safer storage and suppression systems. The technology is likely here to stay, but as a community, we should probably pump the brakes and take a look at where we are going to place these facilities, so as they are not to pose a risk to the public or to the infrastructure.
Good?
Yep, I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you, Calvin. Appreciate it. That's not meant to scare anybody. Those are just facts. Well, so the third speaker is Mr. Michael Smith. Mike currently serves as a Chemung County legislator representing District 14. He served as a Town of Southport board member for 12 years, and of those 12, of the 12 years, 10 of them, he was the deputy supervisor. Mike was the director of the Chemung County Emergency Management, where he served for 23 years before retiring. He's a wealth of knowledge. He's been in the fire business, I think, ever since he was born. So I give you Mike Smith.
Thanks, John. Good evening, everyone. Some of what I say may be redundant with what the fire marshal said, but that's okay because it'll help to reinforce what's going on here. I became aware of this when I received a call from Mr. Rosengata, and he explained to me what the proposal was for his property on West Hill. I'm very familiar with this area. I worked on a farm on West Hill throughout my high school and college years, and when he told me about this, I thought, boy, this is a strange sighting location. As John mentioned, for 23 years I ran the county's Office of Fire and Emergency Management, and there are 4 pillars of emergency management, and they are planning, response, recovery, and mitigation. I hope that through this meeting we can avoid having to do the response and recovery part of this. I don't necessarily oppose these solar energy systems or batteries. I can't say I'm a big fan, but I believe that if we are going to have them, we've got to site them in locations where we minimize the potential impact to the environment. And if you go to the site that's proposed for this battery storage facility, you look downhill directly into the Elmira Water Board's reservoir. This makes no sense to me. Fire Marshal mentioned, should this battery catch on fire and a fire suppression effort was mounted, there would be thousands and thousands and thousands of gallons of water used to extinguish it. And I think all we can agree here, water runs downhill, and all of the products that are produced through the combustion of this battery would be washed in the water, and it will run downhill to the Elmira Water Board's reservoir. And it doesn't matter if it comes down in the rainwater and washes it down, or the fire hoses wash it down. Water runs downhill, and sooner or later it's going to end up in the Water Board's reservoir. Were I the Water Board, I would be horrified by this, because it's the first reservoir. There's another behind it, but the first one is the one that would most probably bear the greatest environmental impact from this. The second thing you might want to consider is, again, the fire marshal mentioned the smoke and the toxic nature of the smoke. All of the black stuff you see in the smoke is particulates. It's incompletely combusted stuff, and it will rise on the thermal column from the fire heat. And many of you in the room are old enough to remember radioactive fallout and duck and cover and all of those things we used to do in school. This is the same principle. This particulate matter gets up into the atmosphere and is blown by the wind, and at some point cools off and it falls. It's coming down to Earth, and it's coming down wherever the wind may carry it, and that means it's coming down on your homes, your yards, whatever the area may be where the wind takes it. We've looked at the radius of a mile around this proposed thing, and as was mentioned, it encompasses the Arnett Ogden Hospital, the correctional facility, Cohen School in the Heights, the reservoir, and I would suspect that it probably would affect the water treatment facility and would be right on the fringe of Ernie Davis Academy. So I don't deal in hysteria. That's not my thing. But I think, as I mentioned, the siting is not right. You don't put something of this nature in an area where the potential for truly catastrophic consequences exists. Mr. Bruin mentioned we had a meeting a week ago. The night of or day after we had the meeting, one of these things took off in California. 1,500 people were evacuated, and the fire chief was questioned about the nature of this thing, and he said, you can call it anything you want, but it's a catastrophe. One of them caught fire in transit. It was being taken to the site where it was going to be installed, and it caught fire. They do this would you say spontaneously is a good word? They just kind of,
They can, yes.
they just kind of catch fire. And we see this typically because they get overheated. They're being charged. We have had a great number of issues with lithium-ion batteries, as the fire marshal said. Generally because they're being charged, they heat, and heat causes them to degrade, and then the thermal runaway occurs. When Mr. Rosengata spoke with me about this, I suggested he call the fire chief, because Chief Mallow is probably the most knowledgeable person in the county presently about lithium-ion batteries and how to fight them when they catch fire. We've certainly not seen anything of this magnitude. These things are big. When you talk about the size of a tractor-trailer box, it's a pretty big device. So we're very concerned about that. In many of the photographs I've seen and looking at research on these things, it isn't a single one. There are banks of them. So if one catches fire, and I appreciate that this project is supposed to have but one, I guess that remains to be seen, but one of them could very well be bad enough. So I guess the long and short of this is I'd rather mitigate this before something happens. We don't necessarily have to oppose solar energy and battery storage, but siting I think we have to be very concerned with. You've got to put it someplace where if it does decide to let loose, it isn't going to impact our water supply or critical facilities like our hospitals, water treatment facilities. The prison is certainly a critical facility, and schools. There must be better places we can do this. Just as a point of note, the Elmira Fire Department is under contractual agreement to provide fire protection in that area of West Hill. So not only do they have the hazardous material response obligation, they also are the first responding fire company if something happens up there. And as the fire marshal said, it would be a situation where we'd have to bring in tank trucks with water. There are no hydrants, and it would go on for days and days. I anticipate we could support that with a lot of assistance from all of the fire departments in this county and perhaps outside the county to provide enough water conveyances. So we could get them the water, but the question becomes, if they use it, where is all that runoff gonna go? And I think that is of great concern. It is to me, and I think it should be to all of you. The air pollution concern, I'm concerned with the fallout. Where is it going? He mentioned the nature of the toxicity of this stuff. Again, it's not something that ought to be sited in an area that's proximate to residential properties or high-value infrastructure. So I think these are the things I want to leave with you. I'm not necessarily saying we shouldn't do this, but we need to do it in the right location where we can examine what's around it, what's going to be impacted if something goes wrong, so that we don't have to come back and say, well, gee, we planned for it and then it happened and we responded to it and now we've got to fix up the mess and figure out what could we have done differently. I think we ought to do let's get this right before we start down the path. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Our next speaker is Mr. Winston Wolf. Mr. Wolf and I recently met, and we've had several conversations regarding solar and battery storage proposals. Mr. Wolf is very knowledgeable and is currently assisting with a rewrite of an ordinance for solar and battery. So I asked Mr. Wolf if he would join us tonight and give us a few minute conversation of an overview of issues to consider with one of these projects. Winston Wolf.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is this good? Yeah, my name is Winston Wolf. I'm on the town board, the town of Veteran. Prior to that, I was on the planning board at Veteran, and we went through the process of going through a solar facility in the town of Veteran. So what I'm going to do is ask questions, and I'm just going to say here are a bunch of questions that somebody should be asking, and I've provided them to John. I'm not saying they're meant to oppose or promote the project. They're meant to help you address the transparency and accountability. And I'm looking at this from the point of view of a past planning board member, and I wish that we had asked these questions when we had the opportunity to. Okay, so I'm just going to go through them, and They're just to make you think, and I'm gonna give this to John, and then you can do with it what you want. And I've stripped it down from my 54 to a lot less, a lot fewer, so. But a couple things. What's the experience of the planning board that's reviewing this project? Has anybody asked that? What do they know?
Up closer to your
Okay,
mouth.
I can do that. What's the process to appeal the planning board's decision? What's the process to appeal the county planning board's decision? Because they've already approved this. What are the terms of the decommissioning program? That means when if it does get up and get developed and 25 years goes by and it's time to take it down, what are those terms? Is there a host community agreement? That's what you do when you have a town and you have a solar facility that wants to come in. You work a deal and say, okay, this is what we want, or else you can't come in. I was telling John earlier, they refer to towns that do solar that don't have a host community agreement as schmucks. So you need to have a host community agreement, and if your planning board is not doing that, then they're leaving something on the table, okay? That'll help address who's gonna pay for all the fire guys that need to get retrained to put this stuff out. Okay? There's also a thing called carbon credits that the developers probably will be collecting. And if the town says, we wanna share that, the town needs to ask for that, and they need to do it now before everything is approved, okay? What are the real risks to the municipal water supply? That's been addressed, so I won't go there. I have notes about the hydrofluoric gas. When it hits water, it becomes hydrofluoric acid. What about PFAS? PFAS, I'm not gonna try to pronounce it, polyfluoroalkyl, plus some more. That may or may not be in the solar panels. The board, the planning board of the town has to say, we don't want that in our panels, we don't want that in the material that we put on the panels to keep the panels from getting too dusty and too dirty. Because eventually that gets into the soil, that works its way downhill, it also gets into the deer, so you can forget deer hunting. Unless you want PFAS also, sooner. And of course, my question was, what's the plan about a fire event? I won't even have to go there, you guys have that covered. But I did have a couple questions about that. What is the evacuation protocol for Elmira Correctional Facility? Has anybody asked that of the correctional facility? What's the protocol for Arnott evacuation and the nearby schools? And what's the lowest point in this valley? Because that's where those gases are gonna go. So look at the map, and if you live there, you may wanna talk to somebody, okay? Has a study been done on the potential property value impacts for nearby residents, including those that don't live in the town of Elmira? And what financial benefits, tax revenue, community investment does this project bring to the town, and is it worth the expense? Lastly, who owns and operates the facility? It's probably not gonna be the people that you're talking to right now. It'll be somebody else. If that company is an LLC and they walk away and go bankrupt, who's gonna clean it up, okay? And is there any teeth, are there teeth in the solar law that they're putting together now? All right, I'm done, almost. Okay, call to action, folks. I've outlined critical questions about the solar and the BEST project. They should be answered before the community can fully understand the risks and the benefits. The questions, again, are not meant to oppose or promote. They're just meant to get you to address the transparency and accountability. And it matters because it's your water supply. The potential risks to health, safety, and environment are there. And I suggest you need to understand who benefits financially and who bears the burden. I encourage you to make the decision based on facts and not assumptions. It's your town, it's your water, your community, it's your future. You got the right to ask tough questions, and if the answers don't hold up, you have the right to push back. Thank you.
Thank you, Winston.
Yep.
And our final speaker tonight is Attorney Chris Denton. Attorney Denton has 35 years plus in real estate law, estate law, business law, and energy law, practicing right here in Elmira. He's a graduate of Dartmouth College, Syracuse Law School, cum laude, U.S. Army Field Artillery before law school, and he's taught as an adjunct at Corning Community College and Elmira College. And then he told me that should be sufficient. He has more. Attorney Denton.
He said I have to keep it to 7-10 minutes. Normally it's a 2-hour lecture, so we're gonna really compress here. So I'm just gonna hit the highlights. First of all, I have to tell you, a major portion of my practice is representing landowners in energy matters. It was oil and gas, solar and wind. And in solar and wind, our pattern is to say no. We look at all their leases and look at all their impacts. And 99 times out of 100, my clients say no to solar leases. I mean, that's how bad they are for the landowner. If they're bad for the landowner, they're bad for the town. Because what happens is risk shifting. Let me just go over the highlights. A lot of things have been covered today, but all of these things have to be addressed. Of course, the moratorium, which is a great idea. What about the tax? They get pilot agreements and they get these special agreements, so they don't pay the full amount of the tax. The percentage of the energy that solar produces. There's something called capacity. For instance, if it's a 5 megawatt facility, that's what it's supposed to be able to produce. How much of that does it produce annually? Solar is about 24%. Nuclear is 93. Hydroelectric's about 98. So whatever you're putting in, you're only getting about a quarter of the capacity over the life of a year. It's intermittent when the sun shines, right? But only when the sun shines after March 1st. And it stops shining effectively after November 1st. So you get November, December, January, and February. 4 months out of 12 where it produces 0. You don't believe me, go to Cornell's website where they have streaming of how much energy their 10-acre solar beautiful thing that they think is produces nothing in the winter. It's nothing. And I had a solar energy company say to me, yeah, we write it off. November 1st to March 1st, there's nothing. Okay. It's weather dependent. Tell me what power plant has no walls and no roof, right? Can you imagine a nuclear power plant, a gas power plant, a coal plant that has no roof and no walls, right? You see, you're crazy, right? We have no walls, no roof. Why? Because it has to receive the sun. Well, what does that make it susceptible to? We've had tornadoes in Elmira. I was in my building when it went over, and it jumped me and hit a building on Madison and took half the building down, and it was brick. I'm wood. I was lucky. It sounded like a freight train when it went over. Now, you get a tornado hitting either one of those sites, and you're going to have panels all over the place. They're going to be in the water, they're going to be in the reservoir, they're going to be among the residences. This is the worst possible place to site. I've never seen anything with this much chutzpah. Putting it right in the middle of a residential area, right next to a reservoir, upwind from a prison where you can't evacuate those people. There's no way you could get them out. I mean, this is not prison for people who have misdemeanors. This is a serious prison. And you have a hospital. How are you going to get those people out when this thing's burning? What is the prevailing winds up here? Northwest, right? West, northwest, and north. Where is this? It's northwest of everything. It's in the perfect position. Plus, it sits in this valley. What happens when a wind comes down the valley? It compresses, picks up speed, comes out of the valley into the big valley. What's it do? It spreads out. How do I know this? I studied geology, I studied meteorology, and I studied chemistry when I was at Dartmouth, among other things. I mean, these things are fundamental, basic. They're not being addressed from what I can see. And I think the staff here from fire department and emergency management, they are being very, very rational about this. and it's frightening. I mean, it's so strong, they don't have to exaggerate it. I mean, that fluoride gas is deadly. And when it turns into an alkali and it's on their suits, it literally melts their suits. So they want to be upwind doing this. They don't want to be downwind. If they don't want to be downwind in their suits and their hats and their masks, you don't want to be downwind in your house or in the prison or in the hospital. All right, that's the lithium battery. These things also have a lot of environmental impacts. They're heat islands. People think they just absorb the sun. Well, they also produce heat. They produce an island plume of heat. They are micro weather changes. We have a lot of them in Chemung County, by the way. This is environmental impact that's adverse. Also, I understand tonight that they're cutting down a forest, right, to put up something that's carbon neutral. It seems anomalous that you would cut down a carbon sequestration sink in order to put up manufactured solar cells to produce energy that no one needs. Do you realize in Western New York, because of our nuclear plants and hydroelectric, 95% of our existing energy source is carbon neutral? We don't need a windmill, we don't need a wind turbine, we don't need solar in Western New York. Everything west of 81 doesn't need what they're putting in. Where does this go? Who knows? If it's locally, it is displacing existing carbon neutral, right? Plus, I've done the math on this, and if you're reading lately what's happening at the national level, you'll find out these things cannot live without a subsidy. They live on subsidy. The original subsidy was passed 45 years ago to jumpstart the industry. They have been there and they've gone up every year for the last 45 years. They make their money on subsidies. They do not make money off of the production. So if the subsidies go away, what's going to happen to this facility? They're going to walk away from it. And someone made the comment that, well, I think it was Mr. Wolf, that they have the LLCs. When I've done leasing, and which is why we refuse to actually lease, is that they have an LLC that comes to you to take the lease. Then they assign that to a construction LLC that produces this, makes it, and then they assign the proceeds to another company and the facility to a shell company that has no assets. And in the leases they say, you cannot sue to evict them. You can only sue against the assets that are on site, but they don't own the assets on site. Someone else owns the assets. So they've shifted all the risks, the environmental risk, the gas risk, the CO2 risk, the intermittency, the lack of baseline. They take all of these benefits that have been worked into the system over 45 years, and they give you all the risks of this business. There's nothing positive in this for the town of Elmira. Nothing. I can't see it. I mean, who wants this risk next to your residential area, next to your reservoir, next to your hospital, next to your prison, next to your school? It doesn't make sense. You have the ability to stop this. You have these people have provided you with the ammunition. And the site is the biggest thing to stop this. It is the worst possible site. I'm going to give to John something that I wrote a few years ago about siting and where they should be siting these. They shouldn't be siting them in the middle of a residential area. They shouldn't be cutting down trees. It shouldn't be on a slope. I mean, anybody who's ever ridden a mountain bike or walked up West Hill Road or over Coleman Avenue knows this is really steep. There is going to be runoff. And what are they having in California right now after it's burned off those hills? Mudslides, runoff, ash, toxic ash. We're going to have a worse fire. I got to ask a question, Fire Marshal. What is the temperature of these fires?
The actual temperature, I'm not sure, but very hot.
In the thousands of degrees?
I would say so.
Okay, that's hot. And you're putting it right in the middle of what you're doing out there. So you've gotten all the information tonight, you've gotten all the ammunition. If you decide that you want to fight it and get legal counsel, I've got a name for you, a guy. His name's Gary Abraham. He's excellent with this. He fights these in Western New York. I can give you his email afterwards. I talked to him today, or actually yesterday, saying that I was going to do this. I told him briefly what your circumstance is. He said he'd love to talk to you, and this is a case that if the facts are as we say they are, he would probably take. I don't know what he charges, but he's really good. He's the best in the industry, and he's fighting these in Western New York. So if you decide you need legal counsel, I will hook you up with Gary Abraham. But
Where's he located?
Cattaraugus County, so he's in the southern tier. Gary Abraham. I know him well from working with him over the years on stopping these things in places. Plus, he's part of our nuclear group. I'm part of a group that's promoting nuclear energy upstate. So I know him through that as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't want to forget this before we open up the question and comments. If anyone is planning on attending the planning board, that is on February 3rd, next Monday. It's next Monday. I don't know what time. Do you know what time, Albert? 7? 7 o'clock at Town Hall? At the Town Hall. I didn't want to forget that date. So now it's time for comments and questions. Again, I would ask that you give your name, and also if you're representing a company or whatever, if you're speaking on behalf of someone else, if you would also identify that. So, okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Roberta Huffman. I live at 98 West Hill Road A in the area. Who is the company that's doing this? Is there a name for this company?
I believe it's Carson Energy, or Carson Power.
C-A-R-S-O-N?
Yes.
Thank you.
I had to deal with PTM Solar Incorporated, who had my husband sign the contract for 25 years that I canceled within the 72 hours. But there was PTM Solar.
Yeah. Oh, there's numerous companies.
So you're gonna have more than one company trying to do all this?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, and it's they're very active right now. New York State put a self-imposed 2030 date to be, I don't know, 70 or 75% electric, all electric. And I think, and I'm kind of shooting from the hip here, but I think because of the presidential election, I think some of the companies might be concerned about losing their federal tax credits. And so there's been a push, it's been a big push just recently on this. Yeah, Art.
Art Ambrose, representing myself as a homeowner on Coleman Avenue. How far along in this process is this? I mean, it's new to me.
Yeah, the 200 West Hill project.
We
Yeah.
received, but how is, I'm hearing parts of it are approved, or
Yeah, the
how
train.
far along is it?
This project, again, I found out about it after there had already been 2 public hearings. So this has been going on, I think, since late summer.
August 5th, meeting.
August 5th. So it's been going on since then. I found out about it 2.5 weeks ago. So
Public
that,
hearings where?
at the planning board, at Town Hall.
Town of Elmira.
Pardon me?
County?
Town of Elmira, John.
Town of Elmira.
So why didn't people know about this?
Well,
Curious. I'm Diana Hughes, Comstock.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hi. They advertise, you have an ordinance, and the ordinance says you have to notify in the newspaper, or, and the town did that. but in November. And so that they had the notice and they had the public hearings, but it's not like before when everyone read the paper and so on. It's just not the same. And so I don't think it was anything intentional, but the word just, sorry, Jim. It wasn't anything intentional, it's just that it did not reach the community at all. I live 333 feet from this project,
Yeah.
and I knew nothing about it.
So just
Go
a
ahead.
follow-up question.
Sure.
So the minutes of the Town of Elmira Planning Board from December 2nd said, and mailed letters of intent for the property to residents in that area. Do we know who mailed the letters, and is there a list of who got those letters? I live at Hillcrest Road, and I certainly didn't get a letter.
Well, okay, so here, that's part of the issue here.
Yeah.
This, the time. Just one second, Susan. This is the list that was notified. Per the ordinance that says 200 feet from the project. See that? Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Susan.
Okay, so what I was gonna say is, I was one of the few people that got the notice in December, but meanwhile, this has been going on since the summertime. We got, if you were within 200 feet, well, that means if you were across the road, you were too far away, okay? So there weren't very many of us at the December meeting, and when my brother and I realized that, we sent out more information, not as broad as this, okay? And more people came and spoke at the January meeting. But right now, they're scheduled to take a vote on Monday evening. And all this information you provided is telling us it shouldn't be done. But can we stop it at this point, is my question.
Yeah, it's concerning because of the location more than anything else. Solar's a reality. I'm not anti-solar, I'm not pro-solar. I mean, it is what it is. I think solar in the right location is okay. But this location is problematic, primarily because of two things. One is the battery storage container, and the second is the runoff issue. It's just, well, three things actually, and it's in a residential area. So, I mean, I'm sure there's better site locations, but, yeah. Joe?
Hi, Joe DeLeon. I live 3 houses south of John. This is just to put something in perspective. Recently, probably last September, we all know Tesla. One of their semi-trucks, which uses considerably less amount of batteries than would be in a solar project, got in a collision and caught on fire. It took over 50,000 gallons of water to put that out. The only real way of putting out these fires, you can spray as much water on you want them, they need to be submerged after they've been encapsulated.
That's right.
That's just to put it in perspective, if you think of 50,000 gallons of water just to put out a truck fire.
Did you have your hand up? Somebody right here?
I did.
You did?
I actually read the entire document from New York State on battery energy storage system guidebook. And the state requires 200 feet. But I find it perplexing that you get a notice if you live within 200 feet, but the ramifications from what we're hearing is far wider than that. I pulled all of the meeting minutes for the town of Elmira since August 5th when it was first introduced. And there was a question about storage container and if it was decommissioned, what happens then? If you look at the state's information, I'd like to know if there's a decommissioning plan in place. Because this very, very large, very concerning storage system, we're talking a lifetime of 20 to 40 years. And there is no plan, because in the December minutes, it says that the bond does not cover the cost to remove the battery storage. It would be the responsibility of the landowner. That bothers me. I don't live within 200 feet. I have a property on West Hill Road A, and I have a property on the upper part of Hoffman Street proper. And I'm gonna say it, I'm in the blast zone, but I don't get a letter, and I'm reading all of this, and it doesn't mesh for me. So I would like to know, is there a decommission plan in place? Because how can we agree on something without having any plan for down the road? Not just the fire contingencies, which scares the bejeebers out of me, but what happens if the LLC just says toodaloo? And who gets the money from this? Carson Power? And the landowner who gets the lease? So it's a compound question, I
Yeah,
apologize.
and I don't have the answer. I have to,
Okay, when it comes to liability, under New York law, if you assign your rights to someone, normally you still have liability for whatever you assign. So if there's a series of assignments. But what they do with these is they release the prior person who assigns them. So if Carson has a lot of money and a lot of finance and a lot of assets, when they assign it to the next company, they're released from their obligation, and all that obligation now goes to the shell company. So again, we've shifted the risk to the community and to the landowner instead of the company that actually got you in there. And just like oil and gas, they have landmen, they have these companies that go out and get your signature and get these things done, and then they assign it, and they get their money, and they assign it to the ultimate party. So you're right, there's no way to protect yourself, because what's gonna happen is if you don't have a letter of credit that expands with inflation and with a cost, then you'll have nothing, and it's just like 25 to 40 years. Nobody in this room is gonna be alive in 40 years. If you are, congratulations. But, we'll be in a rest home probably.
thank you, Chris.
Okay, her question was not answered.
Thank you.
She said the planning board on February 3rd. Is it too late to get this to get stopped?
I can't speak for the planning board. All right, there is a planning board meeting on February 3rd. Originally, when I first found out about the project, I was thinking of going to the planning board and speaking to the planning board. I was told the public comment portion had passed. I could go to the meeting and I could submit something in writing, but I couldn't speak to them. That's why this ended up. We look at this as a public forum that we can then take the questions and concerns or support, whatever it might be, to the planning board on Monday. It's being filmed. I retain the services of Steve Ramsdell. And the video of tonight's meeting will go to the planning board as well as the town board. I don't know what they'll do. Our hope is that they will pause, put a moratorium in place, and then take a deeper dive into the solar industry and how it can impact the town of Elmira, the community as a whole, economically, environmentally, and socially. And when I say socially, that goes back to when the windmills first started coming around. I was talking to a developer, and he told me he had never seen anything divide a community like windmills did. Well, we have the same thing here. Solar, there is a place for it. And we need to do our due diligence to make sure that these projects, they're gonna happen, it's a reality, that these projects are located in a manner that is positive for the community, not a negative. Unfortunately, this one, the train has left the station, and we're hoping we can stop it, because if the project goes forward, even if a moratorium is passed after that, any developer is gonna use what was done on this project as a case for their next project. So hopefully we can have them do a moratorium.
I have a question. Do you know if they have a seeker statement?
They do.
Did they negative deck this?
I don't know.
What does that mean?
Negative deck means that they say, oh, there's no environmental impact. And that's the death for us. We need to find out if there was a seeker statement, whether they required environmental impact. If they did not, you can open that up. You can ask them to adjourn the meeting and reconsider whether or not it's negative decked or what the seeker is. Because this is serious, this is the worst environmental impact I've ever seen. I've seen a lot, most of them are negative decked. This is not. So,
They did a seeker.
Did they negative deck it?
The planning board was the entity, did the seeker.
and did they negative deck it? Again, right, that's what you can contest.
We need
Ask
to,
them
we need to make some,
reconsider
Yeah,
that.
so-
we need to make some sense out of this. Hang on just a minute here. We gotta
A
explain.
seeker is a state environmental quality review of a project. That's what they're talking about up here. All projects have to have one, and in this case, what they're saying, they did do one, and they were saying, whoever they are, there is no negative environmental impact.
But I guess that's the question. Does anybody in this room know who did that, who's responsible?
It's the
Or
people
I
on
don't.
that planning board, and that's public record, and they all have phones.
Okay.
I'm not
So is there, may I ask, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am?
I have a question, because my understanding is this land that they're putting this on is at the end of the dam on the left, correct?
No.
No.
It's on the other side of West Hill Road. It's on
Yes.
the east side of West Hill.
Yes.
You're going,
But my understanding is Dr. Charlotte owns all the woods across from me,
That's different.
and I haven't heard any mention of that. Is it in town of Elmira, or where is it? 'Cause I'm
That's
in
in
Big
the town of
Flats.
Big Flats, actually.
Is it town of Big
Yeah.
Flats?
Mhm. And town of Big Flats are one of the towns that have, had, I don't know if their moratorium has ended yet, but they did, have a moratorium.
What qualifications does a seeker have to have? I mean, how do you know that they even know what they're talking about, what they're looking for, or what?
I believe seekers, are completed typically by engineering companies. Yeah, it's a third party, independent third party, typically an engineering firm that would do it. You know,
And
so,
despite all of this information, they deem no environmental impact whatsoever.
that's what I'm hearing tonight. Yeah, go ahead. I don't know if they have there or not.
Because it looks like, I went back and looked at some notes, and it looks like Egan's, whoever's in charge of Egan's estate, it was on the record that they were holding a lease.
Well, even if they had signed a lease, it would be contingent on the planning board approving it. So, I mean, that's the real issue, is Monday's planning board meeting. Yeah, Terry?
So, Big Flats Planning Board, if you refer to their notes, they've been meeting on that. I just recently found out about that also. So, that's in their minutes of their meetings.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
On the question of runoff, Drew Storch, how do they maintain these over 25 years? Are they dumping Roundup on this ground to kill the vegetation for 25 years?
I don't know, but I'm concerned about runoff. I'm particularly concerned about runoff because the report, the questions that were given to Labella, which is an engineering consulting firm, one of the questions was, where is this runoff gonna go? Well, the runoff is going into Heller Creek. Heller Creek runs along the side of my property, and I'm on a well. And I was never even notified about it, so that's why it's concerning.
There's 20-some wells down in West Hill. All of those people have wells.
Yeah, so.
I'm sure you don't want Roundup in there.
No.
Just to give you an idea about runoff, every drop of water from this whole project eventually goes into Eldridge Lake.
And that's true, through Heller Creek into Eldridge Lake, that is true. And I just want to clear something else up. This is a commercial project, this is big, it's 25 acre project. We are not talking about the homeowner who wants to put up a couple solar panels to offset their electricity. And even those might have a small battery storage in their basement or something like that. We're not talking about that. Even those can be dangerous. I mean, it was a phone charger that burnt half a block in the town of Ovid. And I'm sure a lot of you saw that fire. That was just a phone charger, lithium. But we're not talking about the residential, we're talking about the bigger stuff. Here, yeah, did somebody over here? Right, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm the Big Bad Wolf. My name is Nick Cunha. I'm here with Carson Power. I appreciate not being excluded from the meeting. I would have loved to be able to speak to a lot of these questions. They're all valid questions. It's great that a community can come out and speak those. You know, for what it's worth, we have gone through the last 6 months and answered a lot of those questions already. You know, we'll be putting out a press statement. I've been taking notes because a lot of them are reasonable questions. They've already been addressed. There is a decomp plan, for instance. The seeker process is taking its course. We're working with environmental consultants, state, federal, etc., the town's consultants to mitigate for everything you're talking about. As far as the battery storage concern, it's new technology, so often these are the questions that come up. We have here a specialist, 38 years on a fire department in New York that has dealt with this stuff. He can answer a lot of the questions that were asked as well. I wasn't given the opportunity to formally speak, but I'll put it in writing and release it. We'll be at the planning board with the specialist as well on Monday. And frankly, you know, we're following the process. These are all over the state. They're good, quiet neighbors. I understand there's risks of runoff that are concerned. We have a 500-page SWIP document, just like anything else you would build across the state that has gone through 6 months and is still not done, of Chemung County review. So these are all reasonable requests. We're answering them all. We will, you know, if I'll leave my cards, there's an FAQ sheet that I left at the front. I'm not sure if those are available, but if you have any questions, our company's on there. I have cards. I'm happy to answer the questions. I care about the environment. That's why I do this for a living. I hear your concerns. I'll happily answer any of them directly. But for a lot of the arguments that are anti-solar, I'll just note, you represent nuclear. Nuclear has a host of environmental issues that have been fought over the last 80 years, and they're a lot worse than solar. And he's a lawyer, and he's offering his services at the end with the sales pitch. So,
No, I'm not offering my services.
your friend services. Either way, all I'm saying is, a lot of the concerns that were brought up, I could go by point and how those aren't accurate or accurate representation of solar or the project. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to, you know, provide any information. I'll leave my cards. Happy to answer them and stand behind the project. But generally speaking, we'll be at the planning board meeting. Those are public. I'll try and capture everything, and that's what we'll address on Monday. And,
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, and all of us should be there at the meeting on Monday too.
So,
Everybody in the room.
go ahead, sir.
A homeowner at West Hill and a parent of 2 students at Cohen Elementary. I believe it was Mr. Rogers. At the beginning you said you wanted to listen more than speak, but after hearing everything, I'm just curious what your impression is and what the message that will be sent back to Albany is.
Well, I think that obviously there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed, and certainly the senator is wary about the kind of fast and furious, and some people think it's fast and furious, so read that as editorial comment, not, you know, to try to push for a lot of these things. I think that many things are unfolding very quickly in New York State when it comes to these kind of energy projects. And, you know, municipalities have to do the things that we've heard tonight to protect themselves, especially decommissioning, dealing with the safety and fire issues. All of those things have to be part of the process when you're talking about projects like this. Huge, like 25 megawatt projects, they're administered at the state level. But those that are less than that, that threshold, are still at the local levels. So that's what we have to, you know, it's good to hear stakeholders getting involved, and the people on the ground that live in these areas have a good sense of what they want and what they don't want in the area. And certainly we know that New York State is really trying to help move some of these kinds of projects along. It doesn't surprise the senator that there are organizations and companies that want to increase the number of these kinds of projects. But he says you have to look, as we've heard, at the real cost benefit analysis of what's the risk, what's the cost, and you have to answer that with a cool, calm, collected look at the facts. So I know that's a kind of up in the air kind of answer, but the senator would probably say it's very important for home rule and local control to remain on these things so that the people who live there and have the most stakes will have the most influence in the outcome.
Thank you.
Really quick, would you agree though that the state has more skin in the game, having a state facility, being the prison in the same ballpark?
That makes sense to me, sure.
So, yeah, I want to go back and just comment on Nick's comments about, they answered all the questions and so on. This has been the best kept secret. And quite frankly, I'm no wizard, and if I can get this many people to a meeting, I would think someone who's in the business, who wants the community to know what's going on, could get this many people to a meeting. I'm going to follow that up with, I don't believe they have the same concern for all of you that this panel does and that I have. Their concern is the location of this parcel to the substation on Hillcrest Road at the bottom at the curb, and be able to get their electricity to that facility. That's their concern. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude, Nick, but that's your concern. Yes, ma'am.
In hopes that they do get some phone calls to the planning board, can you tell us, is there a website that lists the names of the people that are on the planning board?
Yes.
So we can get their phone numbers?
Yes, you just look up Town of Elmira Planning Board, and you can download, and you can look at all of the minutes from all of the meetings and all of the conversation, and who was present and who said what.
Let's do that.
Amen.
Yes, sir.
So, Mike Smith, I don't live in this area, I live on the south side, but just going back to the beginning, the conversation started where you're trying to explain how we got to this point. You mentioned that you don't feel that it was done intentionally, but I would beg to differ. I went through something personally where all I wanted to do was add a porch onto my house, and they put me through more, and more people knew about me putting on my porch on my house than knew about this project. And I'm not kidding. I sat in front of a panel of like 15 people. Half of them knew me, so fortunately I got to build my porch. But they put me through more. Hundreds of letters went out to different people to let them know that I wanted to do this in my home because of code. I don't understand how this got this far. It was intentional, because if anybody put any effort into making sure that the people that would be impacted were notified, I could have driven around the neighborhood and let people know, and knocked on their door, and did a better job than what they did. They didn't want them to know.
Thank you. So,
there's no question.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
I was being polite.
You were.
But I will say, and there are several elected officials in this room tonight. There are appointed officials in this room tonight. People that are serving all of you. And when an issue like this comes up, and you're looking at an ordinance, and the ordinance says you have to contact everyone within 200 feet. You have an ethical and moral responsibility to the people that put you in that seat to make sure that people beyond the 200 feet understand what's going on. You just
John, maybe it would be helpful, I don't know if anybody from the planning board is here, I'm gonna guess they are not. can anybody concisely say, does anybody know the procedure where we are in the process and what can be done versus going and hiring an attorney right away? I mean, is there something that anybody can explain the overview from A to Z and where we are now and what can be done?
Diana, my understanding is this, there's a planning board meeting on Monday, right? If this meeting didn't happen, I was being told that at that planning board meeting, the i's were dotted, the t's were crossed, and the project would most likely move forward. Now that we have had this meeting, I think we have brought our concerns to the attention of the town. I'm hoping that the planning board will take a step back on this project, and that the town board will then pass a resolution enacting a moratorium on all solar projects, I don't know, 6 months, a year, whatever it might be, without this project going forward. Because if this project goes forward, you can do the moratorium, but you may have won the battle, you just lost the war. Because any developer coming in is gonna point to that project and say, you did it for them, do it for me. So it's Monday night, the planning board decision Monday night, maybe.
Elmira Town Planning Board or Big Flats?
It's the town of Elmira Planning Board. They meet 7 o'clock on Monday.
Be there.
Yeah. Yes, sir, in the back. Hold on, please. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm curious if Chemung County Planning has acted on the 239 referral form?
They have.
Okay. And what kind of concerns, if any, that they have been raised? Also, I'm curious if the SWIP was performed by Chemung County on this, because it's disturbing more than an acre of land. Also, interested in maybe what input that Elmira Water Board maybe have.
Marty?
I'm Marty Chog, president of the Elmira Water Board, and obviously we have a lot of concerns. We are responsible for safe drinking water, and we take that very seriously. Our engineering department is fully engaged in this process. We cannot stop it. If it's passed by the planning board, we have to deal with it. But obviously, we're very concerned, and we will have our engineering department continue to be closely engaged in the process.
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious how early you guys were brought into this conversation about this project. Now that you're here and you're talking about, like, did they?
We were not given, first of all, we're not within 200 feet, but.
Right.
So, it was a while ago. It's been very recent that we have been notified, pardon me, of the project. And, again, we can't stop this. We don't have any say in the project. All we can do is voice our concerns, and our engineering department continues to do that.
And nobody can be heard. So you're going to a meeting on Monday and there's no public or private, like,
well,
can anybody speak or like bring this stuff up, or do you have to do it before this meeting to try to get them to act on it at the meeting?
The public hearings, the time for public comment has passed. I do believe that the planning board does have the authority to reopen public comment if they choose to do that. I'm planning on sending this tape to them rather than submit something in writing. I'm hoping that the concerns that are being shared here tonight, even though according to the contractor everything's been answered, I'm hoping that these concerns will make them pause and that the town board will enact the moratorium. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Dana, that you said that there's, if they're gonna have all their T's crossed and I's dotted and they requested to you for something in writing, could you please attach writing to this? Because you could easily turn that video into a transcript using, I'm sure you understand the technology to do it.
Maybe you can.
You can do it off of Google, it's easy. But I would request that you follow the direction and to submit something in writing so that they can't easily dismiss it right away.
I will, pardon me?
Put something in writing before the meeting, hand deliver it, email it.
Sure.
And did I hear Nick say the seeker is taking its course or it's done?
The seeker's been completed.
I thought he said it's taking its course.
I did say he's taking its
I
course.
quoted, it said taking its course, so what does that mean?
Okay, again, speaking as a lawyer, I'm not representing anybody in this, I don't want to be an attorney on this, this is just from my legal experience. Okay, there's something called perfecting the record, all right? Perfecting the record means that you get your argument, your facts, into the record. If you don't get it into the record, a court can't consider it if what is done is wrong, and you go on an Article 78. So, what that means is since you're a kind of disorganized group, you don't have a single voice, which is probably good. Every one of you should put down your concerns in writing and make sure it gets to the planning board before Monday night. Every one of you. Work on it, do your homework, make sure your facts are correct, say where you are, why you oppose this, make it factual, make it clear, no hyperbole, no exaggeration. The facts in this case are strong enough on their own. Just make them clear. But every one of you, if you are against this, if you want to protect against the risks here, you need to put something in. That creates the record, okay? One person writing in, or putting that transcript in, doesn't create the record. It's just one element. And when a court looks at this and they see all your records in there, that makes a difference, okay? And unfortunately, I disagree with Carson. I agree with all of you. There has not been adequate notice. And you're right, ethically, the town has a duty to you. I mean, 200 feet, my goodness. I mean, the radius for the fire is a mile, right? So at least maybe 1,000 feet or something like that. So there's a lot that you can argue about. Whether or not it will make a difference to the planning board is another matter. But if you don't put it in now, you can't raise it in court. So you need to perfect the record. Get it on, and John said, they'll submit, you can submit written things, but you can't speak. Written things are very powerful, especially if they're well organized and well researched. Thank you.
How can you
So-
write
so-
something that is going to get to where it needs to be?
You deliver it.
Hand deliver it.
Hand deliver it?
Hand deliver
Do you
it.
have to
So,
certify it?
I'm just curious, how many of you plan to attend the planning board meeting? That's wonderful. And how many of you would attend with a note to deliver? Oh, that's great, great. That's good. It's very powerful because it sends the message that you are concerned and you would like to have them to take another look at this. Yeah, just one second. Candy, did you want to speak?
I just had a question. If, say, we got all the signatures, we got a moratorium, how long is that in place for, and how long before they could come back and try this again?
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's a rule or a law that says the moratorium can only go for a certain amount of time. It appears as though the towns that have implemented them for 6 months.
They deadlock them, and if you try to moratorium again, then at some point the state steps in and says, no, you can't do it.
Yeah, I believe the town of Veteran is in their second. They're on their second, so you can go 6 months and then add to it if you needed more time with that. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Living in this community, my name's Rose Watina, my maiden name was Phillips. Living in this community, I have you people who are from this community, who I trust heart and soul. We have a company, it's probably $1 billion company, who don't know any of us and could care less about us. So does that mean in our community, that we need power by numbers? There's no doubt about it, because they're gonna walk in and say, I don't care who you are, I don't care, they're gonna put it there.
So if we don't have power by numbers, it sounds like we need a lot of representation to stop.
Oh, I agree with that.
Because it's just ridiculous. This is our community, and we're letting people come in and just go, oh, it's okay, we can do this.
We had a planning board who let it happen.
See, but that's what I'm saying. We still have a community. We should have a right to say, this is ours.
Well, and Rose, they did have public hearings, they did do the notices, that was the opportunity, but again, it's in today's world, it just, the way of getting the word out 20 years ago just isn't the same today, it
Yeah,
just
but I
isn't.
don't believe that. I believe that when we have a right in the community, we paid taxes,
Oh.
we bought our houses, we.
Rose, they should have done a better job
They
with
should-
that,
they're right.
absolutely,
They slid it right under-
absolutely,
right under us.
yeah. Here he goes.
The best way to get something out in Elmira on the internet, everybody guess? Elmira is crazy?
Yes.
Okay. Or Elmira's 30 minutes, that's to get it out. You want people to know about that, put it on those two sites, you'll hear it.
So, yeah, yeah. This, Joe Duffy.
Good evening, everybody. I really didn't plan on coming here and saying anything. It's John's meeting, and but some things I'm not sure that were really addressed. Is one, John, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, 355 feet from your property.
333.
Okay. So I represent the other side of that street. So that facility is 200 feet from the property line of the city of Elmira that I represent. I knew nothing of it. And I understand property lines, different rules and all that stuff. I get all that stuff. But I would think, out of respect, that the town of Elmira should have told the city of Elmira that we're putting that facility in there, or at least asked us, bring it to our attention, and that never happened. I didn't know anything about it until John bring it to my attention. The other thing that concerns me, and I don't know if the town of Elmira did this, so if there is a fire, we have a paid fire department. Who is paying the expenses of our fire department being there for 5, 6, 7 days, 2 weeks, whatever it might be? For our budget, that's huge. That's all overtime money. The other thing that people really need to be concerned about is, okay, so Big Flats is there, all the volunteer fire departments get there. We're there, but you know what? Who's protecting your house? Because they're all up there taking care of that. And we only have so many resources in this community. And it's some people need to, just think about. And, I get concerned, the budget problem. How much money can we spend to put out their fire without being reimbursed? That's all I wanted to say. And, I would have wished that the town of Elmira would have came to us and said, we're within a couple hundred feet. This room's 60 feet. Think about it. And let us know what you're doing. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Something of this importance to the community. Why shouldn't this be put to a vote? Why? Why couldn't it be put to a vote? It should have been.
Well, there's a vote at the planning board.
No, I mean the taxpayers. I don't mean the planning.
Well, yeah.
Nobody knows the procedure.
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. It's not a public referendum or anything like that. again, it go back to the very, very beginning when I was explaining that in the town of Elmira, you have a zoning ordinance, you have a solar ordinance, and you have a battery storage ordinance. And if you live in the town of Elmira and you wanna build a garage, it's the zoning ordinance that's going to dictate your setbacks and all of that. These ordinances should talk to each other. And the most restrictive should always take precedent. In the case of the solar and battery, it requires a special permit to have a project. A special permit is a very, I'm not gonna say very easy, but it's not a difficult thing to achieve. If it were part of the zoning ordinance, it would require a use variance, which is a much steeper hill to climb. Even that would have been helpful in this case. And that's a very strong argument as to why there should be a moratorium to have these documents, bring in a consultant and work with these 3 documents so that they make sense for the whole town.
I have a question that's probably for the fire department. We lost a house 3 houses up from us a couple years ago. Everybody in the county was there. How many gallons of water can they carry in a tanker from one hydrant down at the bottom of the hill up to that hill? They're gonna haul all that water in a tanker truck to put these fires out if they start up the hill? Is there gonna be a road into that? How are these firemen gonna get there? And how many gallons of water can you carry in a tanker truck? The house that burnt for me, 3 houses burnt to the ground. And the tanker trucks were going and going, and there was no safety.
I understand your question. The tank trucks we have in this county typically are something over 1,000 gallons, maybe up to 2,500, that's probably about the limit. So you're absolutely right, there'd be lots and lots of truckloads. If you've got to haul 50,000 gallons of water, you're probably looking at 30 or 40 trips. It's a big operation.
West Hill and coming up West Hill at the same time.
Traffic's not the issue. The firemen work these things out. That's not a big concern. We can make it happen.
There's only so much they can do.
Well, we told the fire chief when we talked about this that we can probably provide the water. The question is whether you want to use the water. And he has serious concerns, as the fire marshal mentioned, about whether you want to put water on his high voltage electricity. So getting the water there is not necessarily a big problem. We can mount that. We've got plenty of resources. Mr. Duffy mentioned his concern about who's protecting your house. We can take care of all that. That's not an issue. We could put the whole county on this thing, and we'll have resources from other areas that will come in and protect us. So I have no concern for that. The greater issues are the issue of runoff. When you do fight the fire, we can take care of it, but it's where's this going? That's the greater concern. And I think his concern about who's paying for this is a good one. I don't want to get down in the weeds here too far, but here's how this works. The town of Elmira does not have responsibility for fire protection up there. There is a board of fire commissioners that have jurisdictional authority over West Hill. They are publicly elected officials, and they set a budget and they negotiate a contractual agreement with the city of Elmira and with the Big Flats Fire District to provide fire protection up there. So for whatever cost the city and the fire district agree on, that's what they get. Regardless of the kind of fire, that's all the city's gonna get. So there would have to be some extraordinary financial arrangements made to take care of this, and quite frankly, I doubt that the commissioners in West Hill were ever consulted about this, so that they could have made some inquiries about what their fiduciary exposure might be if they've got to give the city greater funds to be sure they can fight a fire at this place. That means the tax rate throughout that fire district would be affected. So whether or not you live next door to this or 2 miles away from this, your fire tax rate could be affected. Somebody's got to pay for it, and that's how that would be done.
I'm a commissioner for West Hill. To my knowledge, we were never notified. So as he was saying, we have contracts with the city and Big Flats. After this project's completed, I'm sure the city is going to see the potential hazard. We are the hazmat team for the county and the city, so I'm sure the rates will go up as a contract comes, I believe it's in 2 years, the contract gets renegotiated, so the cost will probably go up as well as taxes.
Thank you, appreciate that. Nancy?
Regarding the meeting Monday at the planning board, will the planning board have an opportunity to see this film before their meeting? And secondly, our written concerns, can we turn them in within the next couple of days? Or do we have to do it at that meeting? Do we have to be at the meeting? Do it now.
Yeah, you could do it now.
So you say they didn't have time to at the meeting?
Yeah. I would suggest you bring him to the clerk in the town hall.
So if I took or something in the next couple of days and did not go to the meeting, my concerns would still be part of the record?
Yes, yep, yep. It was, yeah, and as far to your first part of your question, I don't know if they will receive the video in time to view it before the meeting. It'd be kind of iffy. Go ahead.
I just have a question. I've heard that perhaps the town of Elmira attorney is here. Is that correct tonight, Scott Moore?
Someone said he was here. I didn't see him.
Because my question is this very simple one. The state environmental impact, or seeker, however you want to call it, is it completely done or not? Because if not, we can look to adding concerns to that. So I'm hearing kind of, I want to know yes or no, is it done or not? Is there anyone here from the town of Elmira Planning Board that can answer that question?
There's attorneys here.
There's town attorneys here. The town attorney is here? It's not yet done. So there is the ability to, what is the process to do, to add to that, to diminish this issue of, yeah, there's no negative impact? What's the process? And where do I find it? Because I'll look it up.
Chris?
It should be on record with the town already. You can ask the town clerk for a copy of the declaration, positive or negative declaration.
But the question is, how do we add to that?
Well, you'd have to object to it, and that's one of the comments you would put in for the town board. Your basic argument here, very simple. The vote is premature. The vote is premature. That's what you have to say.
Premature. Thank you very much.
You should ask for an adjournment, for them to take additional testimony, and also discuss the issue of seeker compliance. And if they've negative decked it, you need to say you think that they're wrong, and they should reconsider the evaluation of whether or not it's a positive or negative declaration. So the real issue is to say it's premature and you want an adjournment. And by the way, my understanding is from the Elmira Fire Department, as well as we just heard from West Hill, they've not been consulted. How can you have a plan when you haven't even talked to the fire department? And the fire department should actually put in something saying it's premature. You need to talk to us first. That's where I would go.
Thank you. Something
You have something you wanted to read? Either of you? Oh.
I do.
This is an excerpt from a Town of Elmira Planning Board meeting that took place some time ago, May 6th. Chairman Miles said that they might need to reach out to fire emergency services as they should be aware or be provided with an overview. Eric did not feel it was necessary, and Attorney Moore shared a scenario regarding that issue. The company contacted fire emergency services, kept them in the loop. When asked their opinion, they basically said they were on board. Chairman Miles stated that he would forward all of the information to fire emergency services. We don't know who Fire and Emergency Service might have been. We do know that Fire Chief Mallow from the city was invited to one of these meetings, and he had some information on it. But I would question that everybody was on board. I think everybody wanted more information. Quite frankly, it was what his position was.
As of December 2nd, at the minutes of the Town of Elmira Planning Board, it specifically says the site plan was sent to City of Elmira Fire Chief Mallow for further review, but haven't heard back from him yet. And then it talks about it's a Tesla, blah, blah, blah. And if it's decommissioned, that was the comment I made earlier, that the board, it doesn't cover the cost to remove the battery storage, it would be responsibility of the landowner. And that was at the December 2nd meeting.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tim. I live on West Hill Road. What can we expect to happen to the property and home values within the range of?
Down. Good question for the town.
All right, so
I looked that up. In other communities, it's half, most of them are half. Half.
So, I'll give you two examples of, one example is a property, very adjacent, to this project site, sold, and the new owner knew nothing about the project.
That would be me.
Candy. And now, they have the project in the backyard, and
40 feet off our property.
they're reconsidering that purchase. That's one example. Another example is I hired an appraiser to do an appraisal of my property for estate planning purposes. And when he came to the property and did his inspection and so on, we were talking, and I mentioned the solar project, and he said, where is it? And I showed him, and he said, has it been approved? And I said, no, it hasn't been approved, it's still in the planning board stages. And he said, well, given your proximity to that project, if it is approved, you need to give me a call. He says, because I have to write an addendum to your report. You're going to lose 5 to 25% of your value. He said, I don't know quite what yet. So you say that, and when I've mentioned that to others, and they, I said, well, when you're sitting in my house and you're talking to my appraiser, it's real. It's the real deal. So there are devaluation issues. There's no doubt about it.
I know that you mentioned, my name is Sue Stewart, also. I know it was mentioned earlier, in the event that this goes even further, and the worst case scenario, and there's an evacuation, did you happen to mention that there is an evacuation plan, or is that part of this whole conglomerate, to do? And how, 5 days, does this include animals? What about the farms that are out there that have the animals
There are occasions when specific companies, businesses, activities, whatever, have to develop emergency plans that include these sort of things. I don't know whether that has ever been applied to these kind of battery storage facilities. As far as evacuation is concerned, there are evacuation plans in the County Emergency Management Office. The issue is, how do we get you out in a prompt and orderly fashion, and where you go. So there has to be a shelter site established so you can go someplace. The hope would be that you go find shelter with family or friends for that period of time that you're gone. It eases the burden on trying to put you in a congregate care shelter. Number of days would be variable. It would depend entirely on the environmental monitoring and what's going on in the air and so forth. So it would be a lot of this cannot be preordained. It has to occur when the event occurs, and then you react to that and do what has to be done. So it's not there isn't a recipe for every one of these things. You've got a framework you work within that gets people away from the problem and to a safe area.
So there's, depending on the area, the wind, this, that, and the other. So areas are established. I've been fortunate enough not to have to ever be evacuated from anywhere, so. But there's establishments somewhere that people will.
There are lists and lists of potential shelter sites in this county that have been inspected by the Red Cross and have been deemed to be an appropriate location for congregate care. So there's all of this is in place. Whether it's a flood, fire, doesn't make any difference. It's all there. Okay?
Does anybody have the email addresses for the planning board? Cause it's not listed on the website.
It's not, I know it's not.
Well, I know there's some board members here, some members of the regular legislature here,
Right.
town board. Would they have it?
Oh, I don't know.
Ellen Gurley's here.
Yeah.
Scott Moore's here.
Albert, do you know the best way to get the emails of the planning board members?
I'm not really sure. It's not on that website.
I don't see it.
No, it's not. Yeah. You know what you could do, Diana? You could just email your comments to the town of Elmira for the town planning board, just, yeah.
Send it to the
Supervisor or the clerk or somebody.
I'll get it, it just makes me sad that maybe
Oh, I know.
people that aren't as computer savvy sitting in this room have no way to contact the people that are making decisions on our behalf. And I hope everybody takes that to heart and, our
agree.
future elected officials.
I agree. And,
How does this happen?
you know, this is all about the communication again,
Yeah.
you know? it's-
Obviously, there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
Black out.
Yeah.
So I'm Stacy Hanyon at the bottom of Hillcrest. I just had one comment to make before all of this starts, before you even get those solar panels up. Clear cutting that many acres and all of the deer and the habitat that we see on the regular. I don't understand how they can even suggest in a seeker that there's no impact. That makes no
Yeah.
sense.
You know, it's, if you read I don't care if it's the zoning, the solar, or the battery ordinance, if you read them, they talk about habitat. And it's not what's happening, believe me. I mean, because you're absolutely right. The habitat that is going to get disturbed in this 25 acres is significant.
Just the erosion from cutting all the trees.
If you look at the Chemung County Historical Department, there's a picture in the 1800s where they totally denuded all the hills around Elmira. It'll make you sick if you look at it. Somebody at the Chemung County Historical Society could pull that picture up for you. So all of Elmira, like a bowl there, all the way around.
So, I know some people are getting tired and so on. I'm very appreciative of everyone who has come tonight, but this is all for naught if you do not submit something in writing, because it'll just move forward. So it's great that we're here, but you have to take that next step and put something in writing. Thank you all very much.